In the kidnapper's game of choosing one out of two, my parents chose my younger sister, and I was brutally killed. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn into the body of a strange girl. She had a paralyzed grandmother and a disabled mother. Life was extremely poor, but there was the warmth that I had long yearned for. One day by chance, I met a crazy woman. She asked me if I had seen her daughter. I looked at that familiar face. It no longer had the former dignity, but was only full of vicissitudes. I calmly shook my head. I haven't seen her. Her daughter had died at the hands of the kidnapper 5 years ago. It was her own choice. In the dilapidated warehouse, my younger sister and I were tied up with ropes, and our mouths were stuffed with rags. There was a camera right in front of us, and the kidnapper was behind us, eating meat and drinking wine voraciously. He laughed heartily. "Charles, have you made up your mind? Which of your precious daughters are you going to send to her death?" My younger sister whimpered softly, trembling all over with fear, while I stared calmly at the display screen beside us. On it clearly reflected the faces of my parents. The once dignified and composed couple seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. Their faces were full of sorrow and exhaustion, and they kept begging, "Don't touch my daughters, please. We'll give you any amount of money you want. Don't hurt them, please." Suddenly, the sound of a wine bottle shattering came from behind. I instinctively shielded my younger sister. The flying glass fragments grazed my face, and soon blood seeped out. "Charles, there are times when you beg me too. When my company went bankrupt and I begged you to lend a helping hand, did you pay any attention to me? What's the use of money? Today, I just want your daughter to be buried with me. I'll give you 3 minutes to think about it. Save the elder or the younger. If you don't choose within the time limit, then both of them will die." As soon as the words fell, the sound of the countdown rang in my ears. Every second the pointer ticked by was a deathly melody. My younger sister trembled even more. Her innocent eyes were full of fear, and hot tears kept dripping onto my shoulders, making my eyes sting. Not long after the countdown started, I heard my mother's urgent voice, "Save the younger one. Don't hurt my Mia, please." There was no surprise. I was abandoned, although I had already expected such a result. When I heard my parents' choice with my own ears, a huge wave of grief welled up in my heart. My parents really didn't seem to love me. At that moment, it was as if all my strength had been drained out of me. I slumped to the ground, unable to hear any sound, and my vision kept going dark. The kidnapper dragged my younger sister to the other side, then came back to me and tore the cloth out of my mouth. "Kid, you have 1 minute to say your last words." There was the ticking sound of the countdown again. I only had this last minute of my life left. My body started to tremble uncontrollably. My lips opened and closed, but no sound came out. The kidnapper urged me from behind. Although he was so close, his voice seemed to come from afar. "There are still 20 seconds. My hearing gradually returned, and a noisy cry rushed in all at once, as if it was going to pierce my eardrums. I looked at the display screen and tried my best to speak, but I couldn't make a sound. Only hot tears welled up silently in my eyes. The next second, a cold dagger cut through my throat. I saw my own blood spurt out. I lay on the ground, watching my life gradually fade away, just like a faint candle flame, swaying and finally going out. I seemed to have fallen into a very long dream. The past flashed before my eyes like a movie. My name is Linda. Before I was 10 years old, I always thought I had 2 mothers. One was in reality, and the other was on the phone. Later I learned that the one in reality was my aunt, and the one on the phone was my mother. When I was 3 years old, there were problems with the family business. My parents owed a huge amount of debt. They were running around trying to make ends meet and had no time to take care of a child at all. In order not to let me suffer with them, I was sent to my aunt's house. My aunt was a very young woman. She wasn't married, had no children. Every day she would brew a pot of coffee, sit by the window and paint, and she could paint for a whole day. I had a light sleep and often woke up from nightmares. My aunt would hold me in her arms, tell me stories and coax me to sleep. She always smelled nice, and her voice was very pleasant. I always felt very safe sleeping next to her. My aunt was different from my mother. She loved to laugh, could do makeup, and also liked to dress me up. She liked to buy me beautiful little dresses the most, then braid my hair, and take me out to eat cakes. She said that girls should be pretty from a young age. Once I had a high fever in the middle of the night. My whole body ached. In my dream, I cried and called for my mother. In a daze, I fell into a soft and fragrant embrace. Someone gently patted my back to coax me to sleep. When I opened my eyes again, my aunt was lying beside me. There were dark circles under her eyes. After waking up, I hugged her and called her mother. She was silent for a while and then told me to call her aunt. And the one who called me every week was my mother. I didn't understand. I had seen other children's mothers. They all coaxed their children to sleep, took them out to play, and dressed their children up beautifully, just like my aunt. And the mother who called me every week never came to see me, didn't take me out to play, didn't coax me to sleep, and sometimes even forgot to call me. I asked my aunt if she could be my mother, and the one who called could be my aunt. This time she was silent for even longer. Then she stroked my head and said that the one who called was always my mother, and she loved me very much, but she was very busy. I didn't understand those big truths. I just thought that my aunt didn't want to be my mother, so I started crying and making a fuss. She had no choice but to tell me that I could call her mother when there was no one around. I was very happy. My aunt was willing to be my mother. She would be like the mothers of other children in the kindergarten. No matter the wind or rain, no matter how busy or idle she was, she would always stand outside the door and smile at me, and then go home with me. Often children would praise my mother for being very beautiful, and I was very proud. I lived with my aunt like this until I was 7 years old. One day she suddenly told me that my mother had given birth to a younger sister for me and would pick me up soon. She was washing vegetables with her back to me. Her tone was very light, as if she was happy for me. She said that my parents' business had improved, and the family's financial situation had become much better, and they could provide me with a better living condition. It took me a long time to realize which mother she was talking about, because my mother hadn't called me for more than half a year. That was the first time I knew that I wouldn't live here forever and that I had to leave. That night I only ate a little food. I gently asked her, "Can I eat less? Can you not send me back?" I didn't need a better living condition. It was very good to be with my aunt. I wasn't greedy. My aunt was stunned for a long time and didn't say anything. She just hugged me in her arms with red eyes. Those days, I was worried every day that I would be sent away. I couldn't eat or sleep well. Later, I accidentally heard my aunt on the phone. The person on the other side said that my younger sister was very small and they might not have the energy to take care of me, and they hoped that my aunt could take care of me for a few more years. I was happy that I didn't have to be sent away. My aunt didn't say it, but I knew she was happy too. She even cooked 2 more dishes for dinner, but I forgot that after all, I wasn't my aunt's child, and one day I would have to go back to my parents. The life in my aunt's house was plain and comfortable. The days passed like the water used for washing vegetables every day, so the day of leaving came so quickly. One day when I was 10 years old, I came home from school as usual and shouted, "Mom, I'm back." But 2 voices replied to me. I then realized that the mother on the phone was also there. The atmosphere became awkward. My mother's face looked a bit unpleasant. Finally, my aunt spoke to ease the atmosphere. I thought the child was calling me aunt. After dinner that day, my mother was going to take me away. I didn't want to leave. I hugged my aunt and asked her if she didn't want me anymore. My aunt had red eyes. There was reluctance, sadness, and nervousness in her expression. She tried to force a smile, but it was obviously forced. She pulled me away and pushed me towards my mother. "Sister-in-law, don't mind, Linda just hasn't gotten used to it yet. She's just a child. You'll get closer to her after spending a few days with her. Linda still misses you very much. She likes all the gifts you sent. She also often dreams of you. It's getting late. You'd better go home early. Be careful on the way." She seemed to turn a blind eye to the pleading in my eyes and still insisted on pushing me to my mother. When I left, I didn't take anything. My mother said that there were new things prepared at home. She took me to the car. My aunt stood outside the door all the time until I couldn't see her in the rearview mirror. Even though they didn't say it, I knew that I wouldn't see my aunt for a long time. I shed tears silently. My mother held me in her arms. Along the way, she tried to ease the atmosphere and talked to me a lot. She said that there was a princess room prepared for me at home, with many beautiful little dresses and a lot of delicious food. I kept my head down and didn't speak. Gradually, she stopped talking and just sighed. Actually, I didn't hate her. I knew she was very busy, but she still found time to call me and would send me a lot of gifts from time to time. My aunt had told me many times that my parents didn't not love me. Instead, They didn't let me suffer with them because they loved me. Now that the conditions had improved, they also wanted to take me back. I remembered all these things, but I just hoped that my aunt could be my mother. She was the one who accompanied me to grow up. We had lived like this for so many years. Why did they suddenly want to take me back? I couldn't find the answer. After a long car ride, my mother took me to a very beautiful house. There was a small garden, a swing set, and lights everywhere. It was much bigger and brighter than my aunt's house. She said that this would be my home from now on. I felt very strange and restrained. I silently followed behind her, until a little girl ran out of the house and threw herself into her arms. She called, "Mom," in a childish voice. I watched as my mother's sharp eyebrows and eyes softened. She squatted in front of the little girl and patiently asked her what she had eaten today and listened to her babbling some meaningless words. I remembered that when I was in kindergarten, my aunt also held my hand and picked me up from school like this. I hopped and chattered while my aunt always listened with a smile and then patiently responded. I watched my mother and my younger sister hug each other. Actually, I wasn't jealous or envious, but my heart still felt sour and uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because they looked more like a mother and daughter, and I felt like an outsider. And now, as an outsider, I was going to join them and live with them, sharing the same mother with her. My nose was sour, but I didn't dare to cry. I could only grip my clothes tightly. I didn't know how long I stood there until my younger sister pointed at me and asked who I was. Only then did my mother realize that I was still behind her. She pulled my younger sister in front of me. "Mia, call her sister quickly." My younger sister's name was Mia. She was chubby and cute. She wasn't shy at all. She looked at me for a while, then stretched out her little hand and took me inside. "Sister, I'll take you to eat something delicious." Her steps were still a bit unsteady. My mother followed behind and carefully protected her, with nothing but love in her eyes. I suddenly thought, for no reason, had she ever looked at me with this kind of eyes before? I couldn't find the answer. In my limited memory, I had only seen this kind of eyes in my aunt's eyes. On the first night I got home, I lay in bed early. The soft quilt wrapped me up, and I finally felt a little at ease. Later, my mother pushed the door open and came in. She said that she was worried that I wouldn't be able to sleep well because of the unfamiliar bed and wanted to sleep with me, but as soon as she sat down by the bed, my younger sister knocked on the door crying, saying that she wanted to hear a story. My mother was in a dilemma. There was guilt and struggle in her eyes. I was very obedient and let her go to accompany my younger sister. She visibly relaxed and praised me for being sensible. I looked at her brisk face and silently lowered my eyes. "Mom, it's not that I'm sensible, it's just that I've passed the age when I need someone to accompany me to sleep. Once I also cried and made a fuss and needed to hear a story to fall asleep, but you weren't by my side at that time, and now, I don't need it anymore." After my mother left, I picked up my phone and wanted to call my aunt, but it kept showing a busy tone. I thought that my aunt must be busy with something. I could wait until she was done and then call her. While I was waiting, I listened to the laughter of my mother and my younger sister coming from the next room, and I unknowingly fell asleep like this. A week later, my father came back from a business trip. He brought each of my younger sister and me a dress as a gift. My younger sister's dress fit perfectly, but mine was much too small, and the color wasn't what I liked either. My father was a bit embarrassed. He apologized to me and said that he would prepare a new one for me. I just shook my head. Actually, it was quite understandable. My younger sister had grown up under his eyes since she was born, and he clearly knew every stage of her growth and her preferences. And I was just a fleeting glimpse in the video occasionally. What could he know about me? That day, to celebrate the reunion of our family of 4, my father reserved the whole restaurant. It was decorated like a fairy tale world. It was the first time I had seen it, but my younger sister was used to it. Before the meal, my mother carefully reminded my younger sister of the dietary taboos, but she ordered a serving of big shrimps for me. She didn't know that I was allergic to seafood, obviously. When she picked me up that day, my aunt had repeatedly reminded her for a long time. And she had also sent her a note in the memo, but she didn't remember. Actually, I wasn't really that sad. I knew that she was very busy every day and it was hard for her to remember every little thing. I just suddenly missed my aunt very much. My aunt would never forget my preferences. Every time we went out to eat, she would also carefully remind the waiter of my dietary taboos. Just like my mother did for my younger sister, she was patient, meticulous, and gentle, after I was taken back. I never saw my aunt again. My father said that she had gone on a trip and he didn't know when she would be back. He also told me not to trouble my aunt often and to come to him and my mother if I had anything. I silently agreed, but I still couldn't help calling my aunt one call after another. At first, it was a busy tone, and later it directly became an empty number. I knew that my parents must have stopped her from seeing me. They were worried that if I got too close to my aunt, I wouldn't be close to them anymore. That "Mom," I called my aunt that day seemed to have become a thorn in my parents' hearts, but they forgot that it was they who said they didn't have the energy to take care of me and sent me to my aunt's house. It was they who were busy with work and never came to see me. Later, they even became perfunctory with the phone calls. Children are the easiest to please and also the best at distinguishing between closeness and distance, Mom and Dad. It was you who pushed me away first. I knew that my parents had been trying to repair our relationship. They were very kind to me and provided me with a good material life. I transferred to a better private school. I had a driver to pick me up and drop me off at school every day. Special people would send clothes for each season to my home, and the nanny would cook nutritious meals in different ways. But we still couldn't get close. Just like my younger sister would unscrupulously nestle in the arms of our parents and act coquettishly, she would pester my mother to braid her hair and playfully pull my father's beard. Every time they frolicked together, I would always sit primly on one side of the sofa. My younger sister was lively, mischievous, and full of whimsy, often making our parents burst into laughter. When she was unhappy, she would throw tantrums and cry, throwing all the dolls in the room all over the floor. Waiting for us to soothe her, her emotions were always very obvious. While I was always very silent and didn't have much to say, most of the time, my parents would only care about how my studies were going, whether my pocket money was enough, and if I was short of anything. Their tone and demeanor were as if they were caring about a guest. Actually, I didn't really mind. Any relationship requires the accumulation of time. And I had so little time spent with my parents that there was hardly any accumulation at all. But I still felt a bit sad in my heart. Probably people instinctively yearn for the bond of blood relatives. Fortunately, my younger sister had an outgoing personality, and we were very close. She would always chatter around me, calling me sister. She also liked to follow when the driver picked me up from school every day. Sometimes I would secretly take her to eat at roadside stalls. Every time we came to a stall, she would shout loudly, "Don't put any seafood. My sister is allergic to seafood." She didn't understand that there wouldn't be any seafood in something that only cost a few dollars. She just remembered that I couldn't eat seafood because of my younger sister's presence. Our family seemed relatively harmonious. She was like a button, stitching me, my parents together. Those rough stitches were all hidden beneath her whimsy. So when I was 14 years old, after my younger sister was abducted and sold, the relationship between my parents and me once reached rock bottom. On New Year's Eve when I was 14, my parents promised to take my younger sister and me to the riverside to set off fireworks. My younger sister had been looking forward to it all day, but in the end, she was informed by phone that there was urgent work at the company and they might not be able to come back. My younger sister cried and made a fuss at home, and even went on a hunger strike. I thought about it. The place wasn't far away, just near the villa area, and it only took 10 minutes to drive there, so I asked the butler to drive us there. I was very young at that time and thought things simply. I never thought there would be human traffickers. Just as the butler went aside to answer a phone call, my younger sister and I were knocked unconscious and taken away by human traffickers. When I opened my eyes again, we were locked in the back compartment of a truck. Besides my younger sister and me, there were many other children. My younger sister was young and had never experienced the dangers of society. She was so scared that she was trembling and could only hug me tightly. Actually, I was also scared, but I couldn't show it. I touched my body and found that valuable items like my mobile phone had already been taken away. While comforting my younger sister, I was thinking about how to escape. The truck was now parked under a remote bridge opening and hadn't left the urban area yet. This was the best time to escape. Once the truck drove away, it would be much more difficult to run away. It would be too obvious if the two of us tried to escape, and my younger sister was too small to run away on her own. I couldn't possibly leave her behind and run away by myself. The best way was to find someone who could run out and call the police as soon as possible. I looked around and saw a boy about my age among the group of children. Although he had a bruised face, he looked quite smart. I moved next to him and asked him if he dared to run. I told him my plan. I took off my coat and banged on the door loudly, saying that I had diarrhea. The person guarding us came to open the door. I threw my coat over his head at once and then jumped around making a lot of noise. When the children in the compartment saw this, they all jumped out of the truck and ran outside, but the chaos didn't last long. I was quickly subdued, and the accomplices of the human traffickers soon came. The fleeing children were all caught back one by one. The human traffickers counted the number of people and found that one was missing. As expected, I was severely beaten. My younger sister rushed up to protect me, and I held her in my arms. My younger sister was so cute. If she got hurt, she wouldn't be so pretty anymore. I didn't know how long the beating lasted. I just felt that there wasn't a single part of my body that wasn't in pain. My younger sister curled up in my arms and cried. I held her tightly and told her in a hoarse voice not to be afraid. The police had already been called, and we would be saved soon. Only I knew that in fact, the little boy hadn't really run away, although it was very dark. The place was very open with no cover. If he had run, he would have been easily caught back. So when I created the chaos just now, I just wanted all the human traffickers to run out to chase after the people, so that he could steal a mobile phone and call the police. Now the little boy was hiding under the truck. The human traffickers searched around but couldn't find him. They thought he had really run away, so they beat me again. Then they discussed leaving without waiting for the others. I listened intently, but gradually lost consciousness. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. There were a lot of tubes inserted into my body, and I couldn't speak, but I heard my mother's heartrending cries. Later I learned that I had been beaten unconscious and my breath was very weak. The human traffickers thought I was dead and left me off the truck, while my younger sister was still on the truck. After the truck drove away, the little boy carried me and walked outside. He met the arriving police, and we were sent to the hospital. I stayed in the intensive care unit for a long time and then was transferred to a general ward and stayed there for a long time. During that period, my parents only came twice. In order to search for my younger sister, they visibly lost a lot of weight, but even after I recovered from my injuries, my younger sister still hadn't been found, although the license plate number was provided when the police were called. The human traffickers were very cunning and changed several cars on the way, making it very difficult to track them. No one knew where my younger sister had gone. After my younger sister was abducted and sold, my parents seemed to have lost their vitality and became much more dejected. Even the hair at their temples turned white. My father numbed himself with work and often went on business trips for months at a time. My mother also started drinking heavily, but I knew that beneath the calm surface, there were always turbulent waves. Finally, one day my mother got drunk. The alcohol numbed some of her senses and also tore open the surface, revealing her ferocious and terrifying fangs. That day she smashed a lot of things and cried, saying that it was all my fault. If I hadn't insisted on taking my younger sister to set off fireworks, my younger sister wouldn't have been abducted and sold. She cried heartrendingly and questioned why it wasn't me who was abducted and sold. She asked me if I was jealous of my younger sister and if I deliberately let my younger sister be abducted and sold. Otherwise, why was I able to escape? I didn't know how to answer her and could only bear it silently. The next day, when she sobered up, my mother cried and apologized to me, saying that it was just drunken nonsense and asked me not to take it to heart. But how could I forget, when you questioned me? The resentment and hatred in your eyes were so real, Mom. How can I tell you that I would rather it be me who was abducted and sold? In this family, there has always been an invisible barrier between me and you. Only my younger sister has no reservations about me. She would always save a portion of all the delicious food and fun things for me. She always remembered that I was allergic to seafood. Unlike you who still often forgot, you were always very busy. Every night when she had a nightmare or couldn't fall asleep, she liked to crawl into my bed. She liked to hug me and say that I was the best sister in the world, but I didn't protect her well. How nice it would be if it was me who was abducted and sold. Maybe then you wouldn't be as painful and sad as you are now. The search for my younger sister never stopped, but there was always no news. Occasionally, there were some speculative clues, and my parents would fly there overnight to confirm them, but they always came back empty-handed. I often saw my parents sitting in my younger sister's room crying. They would gently stroke my younger sister's photo with great pity, but I didn't know how to make them smile. I didn't have my younger sister's liveliness or her whimsy. I couldn't make anyone happy, not even myself. I could only study hard and always stay at the top of my grade. I participated in many competitions and won a lot of awards and certificates. Although my parents never cared, I didn't know why I was doing this. But not letting my parents worry and be disappointed seemed to be the only thing I could do. I knew that I couldn't replace my younger sister's position in their hearts, but I also hoped that they could be happy for a moment because of me. When I was in high school, a boy transferred to our class. I recognized him as the little boy who escaped that night. He said his name was Harry, without the bruises. Harry had a very handsome face, which made him very popular at school. But he ignored everyone and just followed behind me. I knew that he also recognized me. Not long after, he moved into the villa area where my family lived and became my neighbor, and we became friends. On New Year's Eve, when I was 15, my parents received new clues and flew to H City. I was the only one left at home. Unexpectedly, Harry was also alone. He invited me to his home to stay up for the new year. He cooked a whole table of dishes and opened a bottle of wine. That night, Harry talked about his family for the first time. His father had an affair, his mother had passed away, and his father's mistress not only moved in but also framed him and got him abducted and sold. If I hadn't helped him escape that night, his family wouldn't have looked for him the way they looked for my younger sister. Only then did I realize that everyone could taste a different kind of bitterness in this life. When Harry said these things, he didn't even frown. I wondered how many restless days and nights he had to go through to become so calm. If my younger sister were here at this time, she would have many ways to lighten the atmosphere, but I was always very clumsy with words and couldn't say any words of comfort. I could only pick up my glass and clink it with his. On New Year's Eve that year, Harry and I leaned side by side on the sofa, watching the boring Spring Festival gala. When the bell rang at midnight, Harry asked me if I had any New Year's wishes. I said softly, "I hope my younger sister can be found soon." He didn't say anything. After a long time, he let out a sigh. "It will definitely happen, Linda. It's not your fault about your sister. You've already done your best." I didn't answer, but my eyes became sour. That was the first time someone told me that I had done my best. When I was 3 years old, my parents sent me to my aunt's house. I restrained myself and only dared to call for my mother in my dreams or when I was sick. I tried my best at that time. When I was 10 years old, my parents took me away and didn't let me see my aunt again. I tried hard to adapt to the new environment and new family and tried not to cause trouble. I tried my best at that time. When I was 14 years old, I didn't want to let my younger sister down. So I took her to set off fireworks. When we were abducted and sold, I tried my best to find a way to escape and protected my younger sister with my body when I was beaten. I tried my best at that time. After my younger sister disappeared, I endured the silent resentment and disappointment of my parents while studying hard and not letting anyone worry. I also tried my best. I tried my best in everything, but it seemed that there was never a good ending. After 3 years of searching, the human trafficking gang was completely eradicated, and my younger sister was finally found. I didn't know what she had gone through. She was so thin that she was just skin and bones. She not only forgot everything in the past and didn't remember us, but also became a bit stupid and deaf in one ear. My parents took her for a full-body examination. The doctor said that her stupidity was due to being stimulated, and she could recover with good care. The injury to her ear couldn't be cured, and she could only wear a hearing aid for the rest of her life. But fortunately, my younger sister came back alive. Most of the worried looks on my parents' faces disappeared, and they began to actively accompany my younger sister for treatment. In the first month, my younger sister often screamed in the middle of the night. She would hug her head and hide in the closet, crying and shouting, "Don't hit me, sister. Mia is in so much pain. Save me." It turned out that every day and night after she was abducted and sold, she had been longing for her sister to save her. During those days when my parents were busy, the person she relied on the most in her heart was me, but it was also me who caused her to be abducted and sold and end up like this. At that moment, I didn't dare to approach and could only stand aside. My mother sat on the ground and hugged her and cried together. With teary eyes, she looked at me, and there was nothing but disappointment in her eyes. That look seemed to be asking, "She trusted you so much. Why didn't you protect her well?" I fled back to my room. I sat there in a daze, hating myself for being so incompetent that I let my younger sister become like this. I didn't know how long I sat there. A beam of light shone on the window. It was Harry using a flashlight to remind me to check my phone. This was our unique way of greeting each other. I took out my phone. And there was indeed a message: go to bed early, we'll have croissant sandwiches tomorrow morning. The two of us, who were alienated from our families, warmed each other in this way. After my younger sister was found, her condition was very unstable. Sometimes she could remember my mother, and sometimes she was on guard against everyone. She often ran out instinctively, muttering about going home. We hired a lot more nannies and aunts at home. They took care of her in shifts 24 hours a day. My mother also retired from the company and focused on accompanying my younger sister for treatment. The doctor said that we could do some things that my younger sister used to do with her, which would be helpful for her recovery and recuperation. It was like accompanying her to grow up all over again. My mother would take her to make desserts in the kitchen and read her stories every night to coax her to sleep. Most of the time, they would lean against each other and whisper and giggle. I could only stand behind and watch. I saw that my mother was very tired, but her eyes were always shining brightly. That was the light that belonged only to my younger sister. After being dim for 3 years, it lit up again. I should be happy, but why did my heart still feel sour? Later, one day, my younger sister woke up from a nightmare and suddenly ran into my room and got into my bed. She hugged me and said, "Sister, Mia is scared." I didn't miss the stiff look that flashed across my mother's face. That night, my younger sister slept with me all night, and my mother sat in the living room all night. I didn't know if my mother couldn't fall asleep or didn't want to sleep, but I suddenly thought of the time when she was drunk. She questioned me if I was jealous of my younger sister and if I deliberately let my younger sister be abducted and sold. So was my mother worried that I would secretly let my younger sister run out again? I forced myself not to think about it, but I couldn't suppress the sadness in my heart. From then on, I tried to come home as late as possible every night. By the time I got back, my younger sister had already fallen asleep. Harry probably knew about the situation in my family, but he didn't ask anything. When I didn't want to go home, he just accompanied me to run around the playground lap after lap. Then he would tell me what to eat the next morning. Without Harry, I didn't know if I could have gotten through that period. During the latter part of my senior year in high school, my mother told me that my younger sister's condition was unstable. As my college entrance exams were approaching, they decided, in order not to distract me, to take her to City N for a year of rest and recovery. I knew, though, that it wasn't about my sister disturbing me. It was my presence that somehow disturbed her. Whenever I was at home, she always liked to be close to me. Even if she didn't remember who I was, she still liked me. However, my parents preferred that she didn't get too close to me. I didn't say anything. I just silently agreed. I knew I would never be the chosen one, and I had come to accept that. Then, one day, my aunt suddenly visited us after 8 years. She was just as beautiful and elegant as I remembered, with tears in her eyes. She remarked how much I had grown and how I had become more attractive. She brought many gifts for both me and my sister, which she had picked up during her travels around the world. While my sister and I were opening the gifts, she went to the study with my parents. I overheard them arguing, "How can you be parents like this? Mia might be pitiful, but isn't Linda also your daughter? You're moving to City N as a trio. Leaving Linda here all by herself, how can you bear that? You keep me at bay." "Fine, but Linda is your own daughter. How could she possibly harm Mia? If you don't want to take care of her, then don't stop me from doing it." As I looked down at the teddy bear in my hands, a cold hand touched my face. "Sis, why are you crying? Does it hurt somewhere? Let me a blow on it, and the pain will go away." I touched my face, feeling the wetness. I didn't want to cry. What was there to cry about? I had grown up. I could take good care of myself. I knew how to eat when hungry and add clothes when cold. Even if my parents were in City N, I wouldn't live too poorly, but I had forgotten that human hearts are made of flesh. Seeing oneself always being the one left behind still hurts. That day, my aunt argued with my parents for a long time in the study. She left with tears in her eyes. And the next day, my parents still took my sister to City N. I wasn't surprised by the outcome. During the 6 months after my parents and sister left, they didn't return even once. Occasionally, I would see photos on my mother's social media of them taking my sister swimming, to amusement parks, and doing various parent-child activities I had never been part of. They would wear matching outfits, smiling happily at the camera, and my sister seemed much better. I would look at those photos and secretly cry under the covers. I know my sister has had a tough time. And I shouldn't compare, but I couldn't help feeling envious. I never had such moments with my parents, even after I was taken back. They rarely attended parent-teacher meetings. They were always too busy to participate in my upbringing, yet, they always had endless patience for my sister. They say comparison is the thief of joy, but how can I stop myself from comparing? Am I not their child too? Sometimes, I wonder if it had been me who was kidnapped. Whether my parents would search for me with the same urgency and perseverance. Would they go through the process of raising me again? I keep telling myself they would, but would they, really? I don't know. In my senior year, I studied hard and achieved high scores on my exams. When filling out my college preferences, I deliberately chose a school far from home and seldom returned even during holidays. I used the long journey as an excuse, and my parents didn't press much on it. While Harry always stayed to keep me company, in reality, whether I was at home didn't seem to matter much to my parents, and I had come to terms with that. All relationships in the world shouldn't be forced. Though born into the Lincoln family, my bond with them was superficial. From then on, we wished each other well from a distance. I accepted this calmly and distanced myself just as peacefully. But fate, it seems, enjoys playing with people's lives. During my freshman winter break, my sister and I were kidnapped. The kidnapper was a business rival of my parents. He didn't want money or anything else. He just demanded that my parents choose between my sister and me. My sister was terrified and cried continuously, but I remained calm. From the moment the kidnapper set his terms, I knew I would be the one they'd let go, even if it wasn't up to them to decide. I would have always protected my sister. I had vowed never to let her get hurt again. I watched my parents plead in agony on the screen, and deep down, I felt a flicker of happiness. At least it seemed like part of their grief could be for me. The kidnapper gave them 3 minutes to decide, but my mother chose my sister before time was up. Terrified at the thought of her being hurt again, I thought I could remain composed, but when my parents voiced their choice, I couldn't help but feel deeply sad, a sorrow that seeped from my bones. It turns out accepting that I'm not important is truly difficult. To my parents, I was the one easily sacrificed without a second thought. If that was the case, why did they even give birth to me? Why did they insist on taking me away from my aunt? Mom, am I not your child? Even if you couldn't love me as much as you loved my sister, couldn't you hesitate for even a second to choose me? I couldn't ask these questions out loud before my life reached its end. In the moment my throat was cut, I heard my mother's agonizing scream. Tears overflowed from my eyes, yet I felt a sense of release in my despair. Mom, don't be sad. This time I protected my sister. Are you happy? Will there be even a moment when you mourn for me? I really don't blame you, but being your daughter was just too exhausting. You brought me into this world, and now you've also chosen to let go of my life. It's a full circle, isn't it? In the next life, let's not meet again. I lay on the ground, my warm blood spreading across my cheeks. I'm so tired, so weary, I might as well sleep. It's better in sleep. No more pain, no more sorrow. In the moment before my eyes closed, I saw my sister struggling frantically. She was bound hand and foot, yet she still tried to crawl towards me. I tried to speak, but blood spurted from my mouth. I couldn't make a sound. My lips just moved silently. Mia, grow up well. Your sister can't be with you anymore. You have to grow up well. Everything went dark, and I finally fell asleep. Where do people go after they die? Heaven or hell? It seems like neither. I wander aimlessly in a void, surrounded by darkness, with only a faint light in the distance. I instinctively moved forward, trying to grasp that beam of light, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach it. I kept running until I fell into a deep pit, jolting awake to find everything before me blurred. A figure sat by my bed in my dazed state, wiping my sweat and feeding me medicine. I tried to speak, but my voice was hoarse. Mom, do you really not want me anymore? The child is delirious from the fever, she scolded gently before she stood to leave. I could only instinctively grasp her, wanting to speak, to make her stay, but no sound came from my throat, only unstoppable tears. She sat down beside me again, gently wiping my tears. Why are you still crying, my dear? The medicine will make you feel better. I struggled to swallow the pills and urgently clutched at the hem of her clothes. Mom, don't go. With a sigh, I found myself in a warm embrace, scented faintly with laundry detergent. She gently patted my back, soothing me to sleep with the tenderest voice. I clung tightly to her, gripping the fabric as if it were a lifeline. Mom, why have you never held me like this before? Mom, you still love me, right? Mom, please don't give up on me. I drifted back to sleep and saw a girl waving at me through tears. Please, take care of Mom and Grandma for me. I have to go. I tried to speak, to grab her, but I couldn't move, and no sound came out. The moment she disappeared, a flood of memories surged into my mind. I suddenly realized I had died, yet I was reborn. Mom, I jolted awake, my chest heaving as I gasped for air. The sensation as if a blade had sliced through my throat still lingering on my skin. My hand instinctively touching my neck, no wound. I had forgotten again. I was no longer Linda. This was my 7th day reborn, still adjusting to my new identity, haunted nightly by dreams of the night I was kidnapped. After being murdered, I thought I was dead, but my soul unexpectedly entered the body of a girl named Bella, who had drowned trying to save someone. The figure waving goodbye was her vanishing soul. By some twist of fate, I entered her body and was given a second chance to live. However, there was a 5-year gap between me and Bella. The details of the kidnapping felt like they had happened just a second ago, yet now, it was already 5 years since my death. I sat for a while, calming my emotions before getting out of bed to wash up. Having had a high fever for several days due to the drowning, I had taken a week off from school, but today I needed to go. After getting ready, I grabbed my backpack and prepared to leave. Grandma, I'm off to school. Bella, wait a moment. Grandma called me into the room, which was really just separated from the living room by a curtain. The only room with a door was mine. Mom and Grandma slept behind that curtain, our family of 3, my disabled, limping mom, my permanently paralyzed grandma, and me, a high school senior, relied solely on a small food stall for income, hardly a comfortable living. She was busy rolling out dough while her mom had already gone to the market to buy vegetables. As I approached, Grandma wiped her hands and stuffed 2 eggs into my hand, along with $20, while adjusting my school uniform. Just recovered from illness. Make sure to keep warm and don't catch a cold again. Your studies in senior year are demanding. Make sure you eat well, especially more meat at lunchtime at school. The chilly morning breeze of late autumn was in the air, and as I walked down the street with 2 warm eggs in my pocket, I felt a comforting warmth all over. Although Bella's family was not wealthy, her mother and grandmother never skimped on her. They always made sure she had the best of everything, especially now that she was in her senior year, occasionally giving her some pocket money to treat herself to extra meals. Bella was very responsible and knew how hard-earned every penny was at home, so she never wasted money. From time to time, she would use the money she saved to buy something for her mom and grandmother. This way, the family supported and understood each other, living a harmonious and warm life despite their modest means, a simple happiness I had long sought but could never achieve. After arriving at the classroom, I flipped through Bella's textbooks. Thankfully, despite it being 5 years later and some updates to the material, the overall changes were minimal. For me, having graduated only half a year ago, I still remembered most of the key points, starting from now and working hard again. Getting into a prestigious university shouldn't be difficult. After school, I visited the bookstore behind the school and bought a few guides before heading to the night market across the street. Bella's mom Helen was there making noodles. Every day after school, Bella would help out before they both headed home together. When I arrived, Helen was kneading dough in front of her stall, with steam billowing from a pot of boiling water beside her, softening the features of her face. It reminded me of the figure who had sat by my bed during my recent days of feverish sleep, equally slender and gentle. I called out softly, "Mom, I'm done with school." Helen looked up and her eyes brightened for a moment. She put down her work and scooped a small plate of noodles into the boiling water. "Sit down and rest a bit. I've saved your favorite bowl of noodles for you." I set my backpack down, swiftly cleared the dining table, and wiped it clean. "Are there many left unsold?" "Just a few bowls left. We'll head home once they're sold out." Helen placed a steaming bowl of noodles in front of me and then turned back to continue kneading dough, the overhead light casting a slender shadow of her thin figure on the ground. The steam rose from the bowl, slightly misting my eyes. Helen turned with a smile, her gentle eyes veiled behind the steam. Eat up before it gets cold. I lowered my head and buried my face in the bowl. The hot noodles mixed with the fresh scent of shepherd's purse and a hint of white pepper tingling warmly as I swallowed, heating from my stomach to my heart. I took another bite, silently savoring the cherished flavor. I cleaned out the bowl completely, not even leaving any soup. Helen took away my bowl with a smile, commenting that a good appetite was a sign of quick recovery. When Helen and I got home, Grandma had already gone to bed, and I returned to my room to start on practice problems. Even if I had to repeat a year of senior high, I couldn't afford to take it lightly, wanting to achieve good results in the end without any slack. Soon there was a knock on the door, and Helen came in with a basin of water, a few mugwort leaves floating on the surface. There's a worried look in her eyes. Grandma said you had nightmares again this morning. It's been several days now. You can't keep having poor sleep. While talking, she dipped a mugwort leaf in the water and shook it near my bed. Then touched my forehead with her wet fingers. Maybe it's the shock from falling into the water the other day. Let's go to the temple this weekend. I nodded obediently. Okay. On Saturday, Helen got up early and took me to the foot of the mountain. The temple was built halfway up the mountain, inaccessible by car and without any easy paths. The only way to visit was to climb the stairs step by step. Despite this, the temple always had a steady stream of visitors. Drawn by its reputation for efficacy, Helen's legs weren't in the best shape, so she moved slowly, step by step, holding onto me. A light sweat formed on her forehead, yet her expression was cheerful. The Bodhisattva here is particularly powerful. Make sure you pray earnestly, she said, first, to rid of the recent nightmares, and second, as the college entrance exams are approaching, to pray for good results. I replied softly, carefully assisting her as we made our way up. When we were still some distance from the temple, we could hear the chanting of scriptures. As we approached, a young monk greeted us at the temple gate. He informed us that a significant ceremony was being held in the main hall, so he led us to a side hall. We offered our prayers to the Bodhisattva and made a donation. Just as we were about to leave, the abbot called Helen aside to speak with her and offered her a blessed divinatory stick, saying it was destined for her. I didn't need to follow. So I waited in the courtyard. There was a thick, leafy Chinese parasol tree in the courtyard, its branches decorated with red ribbons. I walked closer to take a better look. Suddenly, a breeze stirred, rustling the leaves, amidst the chanting. It almost sounded like the ringing of wind chimes. I wanted to listen more closely, but someone abruptly tugged at my arm. I turned to see a face I knew all too well, much aged from 5 years ago, devoid of its former dignity, showing only the wear and tear of life. Her hair slightly disheveled, she gripped my arm, her eyes unfocused yet her tone earnest. Have you seen my daughter? In that moment, time and thoughts stretched far back. As 19 years of memories flickered and faded like smoke, I looked at her, hearing again the sound of the wind chimes, each ring clearing my thoughts. Leaves of the Chinese parasol tree drifted down, clearing the view before my eyes. I gently freed my hand from her grasp and shook my head calmly. No. As soon as I spoke, she collapsed to the ground as if all strength had left her, her whole body slackening. Has anyone seen my daughter? She cried out. Covering her face and sobbing uncontrollably, I stood quietly, watching the red ribbons flutter among the yellowing leaves, feeling an inner stillness. Her daughter wasn't here. Her daughter had died at the hands of kidnappers 5 years ago. It was her own choice. The chanting continued. Standing under the tree, I suddenly realized that today's ceremony was being held for me. Was it intended to free me from resentment, or to pray for a better next life? I didn't know. Can a person's soul truly be transformed? I didn't know that either. All I knew was that death extinguishes life like a blown-out lamp, all deeds and consequences vanishing with it, just as the faint familial bond also dissipated with Linda's life. From now on, no hatred, no love, no further ties. I withdrew my gaze and walked out of the courtyard. Helen found me squatting at the temple entrance, studying vocabulary. Her eyes sparkled, and in her hand, she held a yellow triangular amulet threaded with red silk. The abbot said, "Wear this talisman for safety and smooth sailing in all your endeavors." Helen carefully placed the amulet in my pocket as if completing an important task, her demeanor light. "Let's go home," she said. "Today, we decided not to open our stall and to fast for the day." As I walked down the mountain, I glanced towards the main hall where two people stood at the entrance. One was the robed abbot, and the other was a young man. He was tall and stately, dressed in a crisp, elegant black suit and wore a string of Buddhist beads on his left wrist. From my angle, I could only see his profile as he listened intently to the abbot speaking. I had never seen him before, yet he seemed incredibly familiar. I wanted to keep looking, but he quickly walked back into the hall. Perhaps the temple was truly spiritual, or maybe the peace charm Helen gave me really did calm my heart. Or it could be the effect of the ritual performed by the Lincolns. But after that day, I never had another nightmare. The scene from the day I was torn up seemed to have truly become a distant and vague memory, and I had transformed into the real Bella. Every day, I got up on time, prepared breakfast for my grandmother while Helen went out to shop early, buried myself in revision like every other senior year student at school, picked up Helen after evening self-study, and then continued with my studies at home. During those late study nights, Helen always timely brought me a warm cup of milk and filled two hot water bottles, one for my feet and another to hold close. Helen might not have understood the mathematical symbols I scribbled on my draft paper due to her limited education, but she would occasionally sit beside my bed, watching me write and solve problems. She asked if senior year was very tough. Holding a pen in my right hand and clutching the hot water bottle with my left, I replied, "It's tough, but I am determined, Mom. I'll get into a top university. I'll make sure you and Grandma have a better life." Helen's eyes softened as she urged me to drink the milk while it was still warm and then smiled resignedly. "As long as we are together, safe and sound, every day is a good day. Don't stress too much. Just do your best and aim to be guilt-free." Listening to Helen's gentle words, I felt a deep sense of peace. Later, when I faced numerous challenges, I would recall her expression and tone that day. It dawned on me that in life, everyone encounters many unsolvable problems, but the understanding and support of family can genuinely foster a sense of inner strength and confidence to face the future. Life continued in its usual routine until one morning a week later. As I was bent over organizing my notes, our class teacher brought someone in. "Everyone, let's pause and welcome our new classmate, Mia." My pen halted abruptly on the paper, causing a small blot of ink to spread. I looked up towards the podium. Reuniting with the Lincolns seemed always so sudden. I had never imagined encountering my sister under such circumstances. She had grown taller, her once childish face now more mature and refined, her eyes no longer timid but somewhat indifferent. In that moment, 5 years seemed to take a tangible form before me. I suddenly realized that aside from myself, everyone else had moved on by 5 years. As the class representative, the teacher seated Mia next to me and specifically instructed me to take good care of the new student. Mia sat down beside me, bringing a breeze that carried a faint scent of jasmine, the fragrance of the shower gel I used to love, but which Mia didn't care for. 5 years is neither long nor short, but it's enough time for a person's tastes and temperament to change significantly. We were no longer the people we once were. Mia didn't have her textbook yet, so after thinking for a moment, I slid the book toward the middle of the table. "Let's look at it together." Mia glanced at me sideways, her expression cold and distant, without any pleasantries. She pushed the book back onto my desk and then lay down to sleep. I watched her back silently, took the book back, and started to listen attentively to the lesson. During the break, I went to the restroom and accidentally overheard everyone discussing Mia, or rather, her notorious reputation from her previous school. "I'm telling you, stay away from that Mia. She's crazy. My cousin went to school with her. He said she got into a fight and really hurt someone. Her rich family smoothed things over, and that's why she transferred here. No way. She looks so fragile." I even felt sorry for her seeing the hearing aid she wears. Who knows, with rich families, it's all sorts of things, kidnapping, human trafficking. Didn't she witness her sister getting kidnapped and killed? Her mental state must have been affected since then. "You didn't know," everyone's been saying. I deliberately slammed the restroom stall door open, and the voices outside paused momentarily. "Holy crap, there's still someone here. Let's go somewhere else." Everyone left, and the surroundings quieted down again. I walked to the sink, and the mirror reflected Bella's beautiful face, her eyes clear and bright, showing no trace of Linda. Back in the classroom, Mia had woken up and was staring out the window, lost in thought. She sat there all day, and even after the evening self-study session ended and everyone else had left, She was still there. After finishing the last problem, I packed up my backpack, but couldn't help asking, "Aren't you going home?" She didn't move or respond, not wanting to pry. I grabbed my backpack and left. The school was quiet, the moonlight casting a bright glow on the leaves and branches. I always knew that the kidnapping was an accident, and I harbored no resentment or dissatisfaction towards Mia. On the contrary, I was glad to see how much she had grown. A lot must have happened over these 5 years. She had changed a lot. But I had no interest in delving into her past or involving myself in her future. The story about Linda was a chapter now turned. And I cherished this opportunity for a fresh start, focusing on being Bella. Since Mia had transferred, she would arrive at her seat early every day but wouldn't participate in class or speak. I thought our silence would continue indefinitely until she initiated conversation one day. During a physics class, the teacher posed a question that only I answered correctly. After being called up to explain the solution on the board, I returned to find Mia had taken my workbook to her desk. I had a habit of marking similar problems with special symbols for easier review later, a practice that naturally continued with Bella. Mia stared at my workbook and asked quietly, "What do these symbols mean?" I reached out to take back the workbook, replying casually, "It's a method for organizing problem types I learned online. Do you want me to send you the link?" Mia paused, then shook her head. "Your handwriting looks a lot like my sister's." "It's beautiful." I paused mid-writing, feigning surprise. "You have a sister?" Mia turned her head back to the window, her voice as light as the wind. "Not anymore." The wind started to pick up outside, gently blowing into the classroom. Once again, I caught a whiff of that faint jasmine fragrance. I turned to look at her, wanting to say something more, but Mia took off her hearing aid from her left ear, laid her head on the desk, and turned her back to me, silently refusing to engage in any conversation. Mia had become much more melancholic over the past 5 years. I sighed quietly to myself and averted my gaze. Suddenly, Zara, who was sitting in front of me, quietly passed me a note. "Don't talk to her. She's not easy to deal with." Puzzled, I scribbled 2 question marks on the note. Zara turned around, motioned for me to keep quiet with a wink, and then turned back to furiously continue writing. "Remember the kidnapping case that shocked the nation 5 years ago? Her sister was the victim in that case. Ever since, she goes crazy whenever someone mentions her sister. Better keep quiet." Zara wrote hurriedly, her handwriting somewhat sloppy, but I could still make out her words clearly. I glanced at Mia again and pocketed the note to continue with the class. At lunch, Zara pulled me to sit in a corner of the cafeteria. She looked around with a twinkle of gossip in her eyes. "Do you really not know Mia?" I paused, my hand clutching the chopsticks as I searched through Bella's memories, verifying that Bella truly had no connection with Mia, then hesitated before responding. "Should I know her?" Zara rolled her eyes at me. "You must be too engrossed in your studies. The news about the kidnapping was everywhere. Don't you watch the news at all?" I took a bite of rice and replied, "Oh, that, I've seen a bit about it." Zara glanced around again, looking guilty, and whispered, "I also heard about it. But don't tell anyone, okay? People say she's incredibly unlucky. Not only was she trafficked and then found, but shortly after returning, her sister died under mysterious circumstances. It's all very strange. In these 5 years, the Lincoln family's business has been declining year by year. Everyone says it's because her sister's tragic death left a heavy curse, affecting the family's fortune. That's why the Lincolns have been holding exorcism rituals non-stop for the past 5 years. I find these theories a bit far-fetched, and it's really sad for Mia, being a victim of both trafficking and kidnapping, but these supernatural matters are tricky, so it's best we keep our distance." The topic quickly changed, and Zara began gossiping about other things, but my mind was elsewhere. After being reborn, I hadn't taken the initiative to learn any previous information, nor was I aware of these baseless rumors. Reflecting on the changes in Mia, everything seemed to have a traceable origin. Since that brief conversation, I hadn't spoken to Mia again. Every time Zara turned around to talk to me or ask for notes, she would glance at Mia unconsciously, while muttering about keeping our distance, yet her face was full of curiosity. Once, when they inadvertently made eye contact, Mia coldly sneered, "Never seen a deaf person before." Zara was so frightened that she didn't dare turn around to speak to me for the rest of the day. Time in senior year flies by quickly, and before we knew it, the monthly exams were upon us. This time, 3 schools had collaborated for joint exams, and both students and exam venues were randomly assigned. Zara was scheduled to take her exams at the first school, while Mia and I, though in different rooms, were both placed in the third school. The day before the exam, Mia unexpectedly asked to borrow my workbook, saying she wanted to review it at home, which left Zara utterly shocked. "You skip classes and ignore assignments every day. Do you even understand what you're looking at?" Mia gave her a sidelong glance with a flick of her eyelid. "None of your business." Zara quietly turned away. I handed the workbook to Mia and added, "If you have any questions, feel free to ask me." But of course, Mia didn't ask and just took the workbook and left. In November, the days grow dark quickly, especially on cloudy days. After the exam was over, it was already beginning to get dark. I hurried to help Helen set up the rain canopy, moving so quickly that I only realized I had forgotten my umbrella when I reached the school gate. I rushed back to grab it, and as I was descending the stairs, I suddenly heard voices talking in a not-so-friendly tone around the corner on the second floor. I initially intended to take another staircase to avoid them, but then I heard Mia's voice. Her voice was as cold as the biting wind outside. "What, you want your head to bloom too?" A male voice followed, full of mockery. "What are you basing this attitude on, Mia? With the Lincoln family's current status, who do you think you can afford to offend? Do you think Mr. Harry will clean up your mess every time? You know how much he despises your family, don't you?" Mia's tone remained calm. "Why don't you try me and see, you?" The man was momentarily lost for words, then scoffed. "Mia, my brother was right. It's a real pity about your sister, such a brilliant student in the sciences. And all we're left with is a cripple like you." "You know what people are saying. They say you caused your sister's death, that you're the real murderer. What do you have left to be proud of?" Along with Mia's voice, the sound of a crisp slap echoed. "You dare mention my sister with that vile mouth of yours." I appeared at the stairwell as Mia was slamming a boy against the wall by his collar. I called out urgently, "Mia." Both of them turned their gaze towards me, standing on the stairs. I glanced calmly at the boy's face before telling Mia, "The teacher wants you in the office." Mia looked at me coldly but eventually let go of the boy, who chuckled. "We'll see about this." After he left, Mia turned to me. "You really like to meddle, don't you?" I ignored her prickly tone and continued down the stairs. Being the class representative means having to meddle a bit more. Please understand. It had started to rain outside. I held the umbrella and noticed Mia had none. "How about sitting down at my mom's stall? She makes really good noodles." Mia didn't respond, and I was ready for her to refuse, but she surprisingly agreed. "Let's go." The rain wasn't heavy, and we walked slowly under one umbrella, hesitating for a moment. I finally asked, "Did you really crack his skull?" Mia responded indifferently. "He broke my pendant." I cracked his head. "Any problem with that?" I hadn't expected such a rationale and was momentarily speechless. The lights of the night market were already on, and Helen's rain canopy had been set up with help from a neighboring stall. The rainy weather meant there were not many people around, and most of the seats behind Helen were empty, seeing that I had brought a classmate. Helen greeted Mia warmly, asking what filling she liked and if there were any ingredients she avoided. "No seafood." I paused while clearing the table, looked back at Mia, who was sitting at a small table, resting her head on her hands, seemingly lost in thought. The warm yellow lighting enveloped her, softening her usually distant demeanor. She reminded me of the time when we were kids and I took her to eat at the food stalls near the school. She liked to look around curiously, always interested in new things, but now, Mia's eyes only showed indifference and loneliness. After the noodles were cooked, I placed them in front of her and casually asked, "Are you allergic to seafood?" Mia stirred her noodles with her head down and murmured a soft, I was reminded of the faint scent of jasmine on her, wanted to say more, but then realized Helen had run out of white pepper. I went to the nearby supermarket to buy a new pack, and by the time I returned, Mia had already left. Helen handed me $100 bill that Mia had left behind. "Give this back to her tomorrow. It's just a bowl of noodles. Tell her to come often if she likes it. I won't charge her." I knew Mia wouldn't take the money back. Money was probably the least of her worries. Taking the bill from Helen, I folded it and slipped it into her apron pocket. "It's just a bowl of noodles. But you and Grandma made it with hard work, and besides, I have so many classmates. I can't just not charge them. They'd feel uneasy coming back if you start giving out free meals." Just keep the money, I'll keep track of it, and we can deduct it the next time she comes. Helen couldn't argue with me and repeatedly reminded me to keep good accounts, promising to return any excess later. After washing her hands and putting on gloves to continue kneading the dough, she chuckled and said, "You kid, always buried in your books. I worried you didn't have many friends at school. To think you're quite popular there. Next month's your birthday, why don't you bring them all here for noodles?" I was puzzled. Popular? Helen smiled. That's what your classmate just said. She mentioned that everyone at school likes you, you lead the readings, share study tips, and they all like to borrow your notes. I'll have to tell your grandma about this to make her happy. With that, Helen turned back to her dough, humming a tune. I washed my hands by the water pipe, the cold water pouring over them, but I hardly noticed. Images of Mia sitting by the small table, lost in thought, floated through my mind. In these 5 years, Mia had changed, yet in some ways, she hadn't. Before going to sleep, I searched for news about that kidnapping case from 5 years ago. It was a sensational case at the time, given the vast business empire of the Lincoln family, a leading name in J. But people didn't know the details. Only that one of the kidnapped Lincoln daughters was killed, and the kidnapper had committed suicide. Rumors circulated that the Lincoln parents had sacrificed one child, leading to a sharp fall in their company's stock price. Eventually, the narrative was suppressed and replaced with superstitious claims that Mia's fate had overpowered her sisters. Suddenly, I remembered a boy in the hallway earlier today calling Mia a murderer. I put down my phone, the image of a young, smiling girl overlapping with the cold, indifferent face of today. It turns out, there were no survivors from that kidnapping 5 years ago. On the day the joint exam results were announced, our teacher was beaming, announcing that I had topped the scores and would speak at the flag-raising ceremony next Monday as an exemplary student. Previously, Bella had also performed well, consistently ranking in the top 50, though she was weaker in math and physics, my strong suits, which made my improvement this time quite notable. Mia's scores were also surprisingly good. Despite her usual disinterest in attending classes or doing homework, Mia finished her final exams ranked within the top 30 ahead of Zara, particularly excelling in English, nearly scoring full marks on her composition. This left Zara so frustrated that she stumped her feet and demanded to know which tutoring classes Mia had attended, without even glancing at her paper. Mia tossed it into the drawer and casually said, "I copied it." Zara actually believed her, looked around cautiously, and whispered, "Should you be saying that?" Mia just gave her a look and stopped talking. Zara then turned to me and asked, "Did you also take tutoring classes? Your improvement is too dramatic. I remember we both couldn't solve the last math problem before. When did you secretly get so good behind my back?" I took Zara's math paper, checked a few incorrect answers, and said, "These questions all relate to the same concept, remember it, and you won't make these mistakes next time." I pulled out some A4 papers bound together from my bag and handed them to her. "This is a mind map of key concepts I put together earlier. You might find it helpful." Often, it's not that you don't know the material, it's just about connecting the dots. Once the framework is clear, everything else becomes obvious. Mia, who had been eavesdropping, showed a flicker of interest. "Did you also learn this online?" Mapping out concepts has always been my habit. I used to create them for every subject, tucked inside my textbooks. If Mia had ever flipped through any of my old books, this wouldn't seem unfamiliar to her. Yep. It's said to be a top student's secret to success. Have you seen it too? Mia looked down, murmuring more to herself. Top student secret, I have one too. Following her lead, I asked, "Isn't your sister a science top scorer?" Mia gave me a quick look, a flash of pride in her eyes, her lips curving slightly. "Yeah, my sister is quite remarkable." I smiled. "Then you'll be remarkable too." Mia's expression froze for a moment, then reverted to her usual indifference. She turned away. "I won't be." After classmates found out I had organized the mind maps, everyone scrambled to borrow them. Eventually, the homeroom teacher took them to the office to make copies for everyone. Zara asked me if it was okay to share them outside our class, as her cousin had seen them and also wanted a copy, but she wasn't sure if I'd mind. Although I found it a bit amusing, the request sparked an idea. That night, I created an online account and listed my mind maps for sale on an online marketplace, along with photos of my recent exam papers. To my surprise, I sold 3 copies in one day. netting $200 after deducting printing and shipping costs. With the money, I bought Helen 2 new pairs of arm covers and a new pillow for Grandma. Helen, thrilled with the arm covers, told me not to worry about our finances, assuring me that her food stall could support my university education without any burden. I massaged her shoulders, laughing that organizing the notes wasn't much work, which reassured her. The next morning, however, Grandma called me over, concerned I was trying to make money because I was short on cash. She handed me a red banknote and told me to focus on my studies. After several explanations, she finally believed that I wasn't scrimping on expenses. Walking out the door that day, even the cold wind felt warmer. Life went on, filled with new hopes each day. As the first semester of my senior year came to an end, my grades had stabilized at the top of my class. Lately, I've been thinking about taking a part-time job during the winter break. I wanted to save some money so I could take Helen and Grandma out after graduation. One day, while I was solving practice problems at my desk, Mia mentioned that the night market area was slated for redevelopment, which would no longer allow street vendors. She had just told me during the day, and by evening, Helen seemed distracted. I figured the news must have spread among the vendors. But since Helen hadn't mentioned it, I pretended to be unaware. One night, I overheard Helen and Grandma discussing where they might go in the future. The noodle stall in our family was handed down from my grandmother. We never rented a storefront and originally set up the stall by the roadside. However, city management often came to drive us away. Helen, having mobility issues and pushing a cart, found it very inconvenient. It was only later, after spending some money, that we secured a spot in the night market. Even though it was located towards the back, at least no one chased us away, and it was close to my school. Now, setting up in the night market is no longer allowed, and we suddenly find ourselves without a suitable place to go. After listening for a while, I went back to my room to grab some paper and a pen, then headed to where Grandma and Helen were sleeping. Seeing me come in, Grandma quickly handed me a hot water bottle. "Why are you still awake so late? You have school tomorrow." Sitting at the edge of the bed, I seriously asked Helen, "Mom, should we consider renting a shop?" I had been thinking about renting a shop ever since Mia broke the news. Renting alone would definitely be a financial burden, so I thought about sharing the space. Also, it couldn't be too far from my school in case I needed to get there quickly. So, over the past few days, I observed the storefronts near the school and noticed a bakery that only opened in the morning, run by an elderly couple. I asked if we could share the rental with them. They would use it in the morning, and we could use it in the evening, splitting the rent and paying our own utilities. They agreed. I opened my notebook to the page listing the rent and estimated monthly utility costs. Helen, looking surprised yet hesitant as she glanced at my notebook, asked, "When did you find out about all this?" "Just asked casually when I passed by this morning." "Mom, think about it. The storefront is actually quite good. I made a little money selling notebooks and can pay the first month's rent and utilities. Next month is winter break, and I can also take up a part-time job. Having our own place might cost more, but it's stable. You won't have to endure being outside in the wind and rain anymore. I'm graduating soon. You don't need to save up so much money for me. I can apply for a student loan in college and work part-time." Grandma sighed, her eyes reddening. "Our Bella has really grown up." Helen's voice choked up. "You shouldn't worry about these things." I hugged her and smiled. "Mom, I'm grown up now. You can share these things with me. Don't worry. As long as we are together, things will always get better." Helen patted my back. "Okay, Mom understands." Under the dim light, Grandma sat by the head of the bed, while Helen and I sat at the corner. A curtain partitioned off a small space, a place we called home. Despite life's bitterness, only the love and companionship of family can be the true remedy. After Helen agreed to share the rental, I took the money and paid the deposit and first month's rent. The first week of business at the new location went smoothly. I thought business might be slow, but it was actually better than when we were at the night market. On Tuesday, I invited Zara and Mia to come to the store for noodles. On Friday, Helen mentioned it was my birthday and suggested I invite classmates to celebrate. Zara was thrilled, always eager for a celebration, but Mia refused without giving a reason, simply saying she was busy. Zara's enthusiasm was somewhat dampened. "That's really mean of you, not even coming for a friend's birthday," Mia faltered, awkwardly retorting, "Who said we were friends?" Zara glanced at me and muttered under her breath, You always have something to say." Then she huffily turned back to her studies. Watching their awkward and angry reactions, I couldn't help but find it a bit funny. Over the time we've spent together, Mia has started talking a bit more. Sometimes when Zara and I are chatting, she'll chime in with a comment or two, though her expression remains as indifferent as ever. It's beyond my expectations that Zara and Mia have gotten along until now. Initially, Zara was somewhat scared of Mia due to some rumors she had heard. However, after seeing that I could communicate normally with Mia, Zara started striking up conversations with her from time to time. At first, Mia didn't pay much attention, but gradually, she began to respond. Zara is a straightforward person, harboring no ill will towards Mia. She even mentioned to me later that she found the rumors about Mia unreliable. According to her, aside from Mia's temper, cold gaze, sharp tongue, and somewhat solitary nature, she found the rest of her qualities quite appealing. Once during a PE class, when Zara had to step out due to her period, some boys in the class snickered. Mia didn't hesitate to throw a water bottle at them, silencing the boy immediately. After that incident, Zara unilaterally decided to consider Mia a friend. Actually, there wasn't anything significant, it's just that everyone involved is kind-hearted. On my birthday, Mia didn't show up all day, which made Zara believe she truly had something urgent. It was then I suddenly remembered that Bella and Linda share the same birthday. I've only been Bella for just over 2 months, yet these months seem to have overshadowed Linda's 19 years. The scars I thought I'd never forget have gradually healed over time and have become a thing of the past. Maybe it's not time that heals all wounds, but love. After school, I went to the shop with Zara. Helen had reserved a table especially for us, complete with a birthday cake. I had previously told Helen not to bother buying a cake, thinking she had gotten it behind my back until she brought out the noodles and side dishes. That's when I found out the cake was from Mia. She's the classmate who came last time, right? She wished you a happy birthday. Tell her it's okay she couldn't make it today. She can come next time. I remember your classmate doesn't eat seafood. Zara hummed softly towards the cake. What did I say? She's just tough all over. I glanced at the bakery logo on the birthday cake. It was from our favorite bakery where we used to order from. I had even gone behind the scenes to personally DIY a cake for Mia's birthday surprise before. It had been a long time since I had cake from there. As I was lost in thought, Zara had already lit the candles and was urging me to make a wish. Helen paused her work to join Zara in clapping and singing the birthday song for me. I closed my eyes and made my first wish since becoming Bella. The next day when I got to the classroom, Mia was already there. I put down my backpack and thanked her. Thanks for the birthday cake. It was delicious. Mia turned her head slightly. Oh, it was just a random choice. That bakery only does custom orders, requiring at least 2 days' notice, so Mia must have ordered it right after I invited her. But I didn't call her out on it, simply mentioning that my mom invited her to come for noodles. You haven't been since last time. My mom wanted me to ask if the noodles didn't agree with your stomach. Mia looked at me. Let's go today then. It was only when she turned that I noticed a thin red mark on her face, as if she had been scratched by something. I frowned and impulsively reached out to turn her face towards me. What happened to your face? It's nothing. Mia brushed off my hand and turned her head away, refusing to engage further. She maintained that low mood all day, and Zara didn't try to bother her. After evening self-study, I took Mia to Helen's shop. Helen greeted Mia warmly. Come in, it's warm inside, the same as last time. Shepherd's purse noodles, no seafood. Mia paused for a moment, letting out a soft murmur before taking the seat farthest in. I knew she was feeling down today, so I didn't disturb her. I just noticed she was crying when I brought over her noodles. What's wrong? When she saw me approach, Mia quickly covered her face with a tissue, taking a good while to calm down. I didn't say anything, just sat across from her, stirring her noodles with a spoon. Mia's tone was thick with sarcasm. I've only been here once, and your mom remembered I don't eat seafood. It's not that hard to remember, actually. I wasn't sure what she wanted to express, so I just listened silently. Actually, yesterday was also my sister's birthday. She passed away, so in the past, my parents would avoid mentioning this day. Out of nowhere yesterday, my mom remembered and wanted to celebrate my sister's birthday. She prepared a whole meal by herself, but the main dish was seafood. Mia gave a bitter smile. But my sister was allergic to seafood. A stranger remembered after one visit. yet after all these years, she still hasn't. I looked down, surprised that Mia was sharing this with me, unsure of how to respond. Wiping her tears, Mia said, "You asked what happened to my face, right? Last night, I smashed the dining table and the kitchen, and got hit by the shards." With a shocked look in my eyes, Mia's eyes reddened. "Sometimes, I envy you. You have so little, yet so much. If my sister and I were born into a family as ordinary as yours, maybe everything would be different." Mia buried her head in her noodles, using up a whole pack of tissues, her eyes swollen when she finally left. I didn't know how to tell her that hearing all this left me unfazed. Remembering or not no longer mattered to me. I walked Mia to the crossroads, where she pulled on her hoodie and prepared to leave. I called out to her, "Mia, I'll tell you a secret. I'm not actually my mother's biological child." Mia turned around, her dark eyes as cold as this winter day. "My grandmother was childless. She found my mom at the roadside while selling noodles. My mom was in ragged clothes and somewhat out of her senses, unable to recall where she came from or remember any relatives. Feeling pity, my grandmother gave her clean clothes and let her eat noodles for free. Grateful, my mom helped tidy up the stall and wash dishes, and eventually, my grandmother took her in. That's how they started living together. One day after closing the stall, they found me by a trash can, wrapped in a thin blanket with a note saying they could no longer care for me and hoped someone kind would adopt me. Fearing I'd freeze to death, they took me home." As Mia looked at me in astonishment, I continued calmly, "My grandmother wasn't always paralyzed. It was a tumor in her brain pressing on her nerves that caused her paralysis. My mom wasn't born with a disability either. She was involved in a car accident while gathering money for grandmother's medical treatment. The compensation was used for my grandmother's surgery, and my mom's injuries weren't treated in time, resulting in her permanent disability. You see, our lives aren't as smooth and straightforward as they may seem. We also have our own hidden struggles and hardships. Maybe life's true essence is its trials and tribulations. Everyone has their own difficulties, so there's no need for envy." The night deepened, and the moonlight cast a clear glow as Mia and I stood at the crossroads, our shadows intersecting on the ground. "Regarding your sister, I do understand some of it, and it's truly unfortunate, but I don't believe in those superstitions. It was an accident, not your fault. You really shouldn't carry all that guilt and pain by yourself. Maybe it's overstepping for me to say this. But I think that after all these years, she would be happy knowing that you still remember her preferences. You haven't forgotten her, and so she remains with us." Mia looked at me with teary eyes for a moment, silently wiped her face, and then turned to walk into the deep night. I looked up at the crescent moon, feeling a pang of sorrow in my heart. If Mia and I had been born into an ordinary family, maybe things really would have been different. After that night, Mia went back to her usual self, quiet, reserved, and indifferent to everything. But there seemed to be a slight change. Before, when Zara would ask her how to write an English essay, she would answer carelessly. That day, however, she provided Zara with some writing materials she had copied from her sister's old notes. Once when I was sick with a cold and didn't go to school, she even went out of her way to deliver that day's notes and homework to Helen, asking her to bring them to me later. When Zara once again labeled her as part of the friend group, Mia didn't object. It seemed that Mia was slowly starting to look forward. Our school's winter break started late, just a week before the spring festival, so I didn't have time to find a part-time job and had to settle for odd jobs instead. Zara had an uncle who was in the fireworks wholesale business. I got his contact information and bought some sparklers and handheld fireworks from him. Fireworks were prohibited in the city district of J, but there were designated areas where they could be set off, usually by the lake or riverside. Every evening, I would take the fireworks to these spots to sell. I didn't have a large stock, and it sold out in 2 days. With 1 day left until New Year's Eve, the riverside was crowded every night. I thought about wholesaling some more. That day, just as I got off the bus and was passing by a flower shop, I ran into Mia, who was picking out flowers. This place was far from the city center, so I was somewhat surprised and greeted her. She also paused in shock upon seeing me. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to wholesale fireworks. What about you?" "I'm visiting my aunt." Mia's calm tone exploded like thunder in my mind, and I froze. Her aunt didn't live around here, and she disliked the suburbs the most. A troubling suspicion crossed my mind. Mia didn't notice my reaction and asked the shopkeeper to wrap up a bunch of perfume lilies, her aunt's favorite flowers. After taking the flowers, she saw me still standing there in a daze and asked, "Where are you headed? Do you need a ride?" I snapped back to reality, unconsciously clenching my fist. "Your aunt lives around here." Mia nodded and looked down at the flowers in her hands. "Seaside cemetery." I knew I must have looked awful, but I couldn't focus on that. I reached out and grabbed her sleeve. "Can you take me there?" Mia didn't ask why, just looked at me for a moment. "Let's go." The cemetery was large, and I followed Mia for a long time before we found her aunt's grave. When we arrived, there was already someone there. The man was dressed in a black suit, tall and with long legs, wearing a string of Buddhist beads on his left wrist. Mia bowed her head, her voice respectful. "Mr. Harry." The man turned to look at us, his gaze cold and detached. Lingering only for a moment before shifting away, he hummed softly, bowed to the tombstone, and then left. As he passed by, I caught a whiff of the faint scent of sandalwood on him. I remembered the figure I had glimpsed that day in the temple. It was him, Harry, 24 years old. It had been a long time since we last met. I'm not sure how long I was in a daze until Mia handed me a tissue. "What's wrong?" Touching my face. I found my hands wet, and when I turned around, that figure was already gone. I took the tissue and wiped my eyes. "The wind is too strong." Mia crouched down, took out a handkerchief, and gently wiped the tombstone. I stood behind her, my eyes lowered to the photo on the monument. The person in the photo looked young, with slightly curly hair and eyes twinkling like stars. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Was your aunt so young when she got sick?" Mia, still facing away, gently wiped the photo with the handkerchief, her voice low. "It was a car accident, the same year my sister died. She was studying abroad. When she heard about my sister, she rushed back overnight. It was a stormy night, a pile-up happened, and she died instantly. My sister was raised by her. They were like mother and daughter." Mia's words pierced my heart and bones like invisible needles. I clenched the corner of my clothes tightly, each breath tinged with pain. Through the blur, my aunt still smiled at me, her gaze as gentle and peaceful as ever. As if she was about to speak any second, I stood there, speechless. "Aunt, Mom." On the way back, I was silent. Mia walked me out of the cemetery, and after a while, she asked me, "Why were you crying? Did you know my aunt?" I shook my head, my voice now steady. "I don't know," but standing there, I just felt an immense sadness. I couldn't tell Mia that I was Linda, nor did I want to lie to her. So I chose to speak as truthfully as I could. Mia was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply. "Maybe it's fate. Sometimes you remind me of my sister. I can't exactly say how, but it's like she once visited this world again through your eyes." "My aunt didn't get to see my sister one last time. She would have been happy that you visited her today." The new year passed in a flash, and soon it was the second semester of our senior year. The academic pressure increased. Helen told me to go straight home after evening self-study and not to help out at the store anymore. Worried about her being alone at the stall, I arranged to study an extra hour in the classroom before going to pick her up. Zara's house was close to the school, just across the street. She volunteered to stay and study with me. Since the start of the semester, Mia had been taking leaves of absence every now and then, and this last week, she had only attended one day. Knowing that Mia and I were on good terms, our homeroom teacher asked me to bring Mia the test papers and notes whenever I could. After much thought, I decided to visit Mia's house with Zara, but that Saturday, Zara suddenly sprained her ankle, so I had to go alone. Standing outside the villa area, pondering how to face the Lincoln family, a car suddenly drove out. I stepped aside to make way, but the car stopped in front of me. The window slid down, revealing Harry's indifferent face. He looked at me calmly, not saying a word, but I knew what he wanted to ask. With my eyes lowered, suddenly feeling inexplicably nervous, I said, "Mr. Harry, Mia hasn't been to school for a long time. Do you know where she is?" "Get in the car." Inside, a faint scent of sandalwood filled the air, its serene and simple aroma unconsciously calming me. Harry was resting with his eyes closed, leaning back in his seat, and I sat quietly on the other side. As we passed through the tunnel, I turned to look out the window, where Harry's refined and handsome face was reflected. 5 years had passed, and Harry's features had grown more profound. his entire presence exuded an aristocratic demeanor. The Buddhist beads on his left wrist added a touch of serene composure to his appearance. Harry at 24, Bella at 18. We had become people from two different worlds. After dropping me off at the foot of the mountain, Harry left. I looked up and saw the temple where Helen had taken me to worship last time. Unlike before, the temple was bustling with many visitors, and people were coming and going in the main hall, guided by a young monk. I met Mia in a room in the back mountain. She was sitting on a bed copying scriptures. "Why are you here?" Mia put down her pen and got off the bed. I took out some notes and exams from my backpack. "The teacher asked me to deliver these to your house. I happened to meet Mr. Harry, and he brought me here." Mia nodded and sat down again to continue her scripture copying. "Why aren't you in school?" Mia bowed her head and after finishing the last sentence, put down her pen and set the paper aside to dry. "My parents want to immigrate abroad, and I don't want them to find me, so I came here." I paused for a moment. "Aren't you going with them?" The windows in the room were open, the breeze of spring wafted in, rustling the papers. Mia shook her head. "My sister is in J City. I'm not going anywhere." Mia hadn't been to school for a month, and every Saturday I would take a bus to bring her notes and exams. Zara went with me once, but she disliked the physical exertion of climbing the mountain, so afterwards, I went alone. Once, during a rain, the temple was quieter than usual. Passing by a small courtyard of a side hall, I saw Harry there too. This time he wasn't in a suit but wore a dark gray casual outfit, standing under a parasol by a parasol tree. From my angle, his figure seemed embedded in the hillside, emanating an indescribable solitude. I glanced twice, then turned to head to the back mountain. I got a bit wet, and Mia handed me a dry towel to wipe my clothes. "Don't come next time it rains. The mountain paths are tough." "It's okay. I sit and write every day. Consider it physical exercise." Mia leaned back on the bed flipping through a book while I absent-mindedly wiped my clothes, casually asking, "I just saw Mr. Harry. Why is he here too?" "He comes every month, stays for a few days, copies some scriptures, and visits my sister." I paused, holding the towel, and Mia sighed, her gaze lingering. "My sister's ashes are buried under that parasol tree." Mia didn't know much about Harry, but through her few words, I learned that even after 5 years, Harry still hadn't moved on from Linda's death. In his own way, he had turned himself into a prisoner. Passing by the small courtyard again on my way back, Harry was not there. Only the plane tree stood quietly in the middle of the yard, just like the last time I saw it. The branches had red strings tied to them, which, although soaked by the rain, still fluttered in the wind, like the person standing under the tree, whose longing never ceased, whether in sunshine or rain. On the way back, I had a dream about the day I was kidnapped. It was the second day after my winter break from school. Harry had made hot pot at home and, through the vigorous steam, handed me the keys to his house. He said if I ever felt too stifled at my own home, I should come to his place. He didn't really need to return to J City. His grandparents were in H City, and he usually spent the holidays there, but he insisted on coming back to J City with me. That day, as I took him to the airport amidst the bustling crowd, he hugged me gently. "Linda, Happy New Year. I'll be back in a week, and there's something I want to talk to you about." His eyes were bright, with a passionate glow. Meeting his gaze, I almost guessed what he was going to say. My heart was racing. I hugged him back and softly agreed, "Wait for me." That was the last thing Harry said to me, but I didn't get to see him return, nor did I hear what he wanted to say. Everything ended too suddenly, without even a moment for goodbyes. 5 years had passed, and I thought he would have let go by now, but it turned out he was still there, at the same spot, after all these years. Someone still remembered me wholeheartedly. At that moment, I didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. Another week passed, and Mia returned to school. Now she was the only one left in the country, and she seemed somewhat more relaxed. Every night after evening self-study, she and Zara would stay in the classroom to help me review, and sometimes I would highlight key points for them. Helen would always leave 3 bowls of noodles ready, and she would start cooking them when we arrived at the shop. Everyone's life pace accelerated because of the college entrance exams, and I threw myself completely into the revisions. Half a month before the exams, during an evening self-study, someone came to the classroom to find me, saying that my grandmother had fainted at home and that Helen had already gone to the hospital. They urged me to hurry, without caring about appearances. I dropped my pen and ran outside. When I arrived at the hospital, Helen was sitting outside the operating room, still wearing her apron. "Mom, what did the doctor say?" Seeing me, Helen grabbed my hand, trembling, and finally burst into tears. "The doctor said my grandmother had a brain hemorrhage and needed emergency surgery immediately, and we should go pay the fees." Helen, soft-hearted and somewhat overwhelmed by sudden events, was considering going home to get the card when Mia approached. She handed me a card. "Use this for now." I didn't know when she had arrived, and I was momentarily stunned by the card, thinking I was hesitant. Mia pushed it into my hand. "If money can buy a chance to save a loved one, not everyone has that opportunity. The last thing I lack is money. You can pay me back slowly." After saying this, Mia walked away. I didn't have time to hesitate. I quickly took the card and paid the fee. Fortunately, the surgery went smoothly. The doctor mentioned that the bleeding was exactly at the spot where the nerve had been previously compressed. If the recovery goes well, my grandmother's paralysis might improve through rehabilitation. That was indeed good news. During the time my grandmother was hospitalized, the noodle shop had to close temporarily. Helen stayed at the hospital to take care of her, and I visited every other day. After learning about my family's situation, Zara brought me lunch every day. She claimed that her family cooked too much and couldn't finish it, but I knew she was considering my pride. I didn't refuse. Instead, I helped her with her studies as much as I could. On the day the university entrance exams ended, the sun was bright, reflecting dazzling light off the leaves. I sat on a bench at school for a while, suddenly feeling an unreal sensation. It had been almost a year since I became Bella. This year, I returned to the senior year classroom, and time swiftly passed as I took notes. Throughout the year, I gained a new family, made new friends, and started a different life. I used to think that blood-related family ties were the strongest. Later, I realized that true emotional connections only require sincerity. After the exams, I bought a bouquet of lilies and went alone to the seaside cemetery. The day was bright and breezy. My aunt still smiled at me. I knelt down and told her that everything was going well and that I would live my new life well. Mia left J City to start her graduation trip. Occasionally, Zara and I would receive postcards from her from various places, each signed with 2 names. Now, she always carried 2 lives forward. To earn some extra money, Zara tutored her brother in English at home. Every time we met, she would comically complain endlessly, which left me both laughing and crying. On the day the exam results were released, I once again ranked first in science in J City. Helen, laughing through her tears, said she would take me to the temple to fulfill a vow, but there was no one under the plane tree that day. My grandmother's surgery went very well, and she was already undergoing rehabilitation. Although moving was still difficult, she could at least stand for a short time now. Everything was progressing smoothly. With more time during the summer holiday, I took a part-time job at a bilingual bookstore cafe, which paid a bit more because of the bilingual requirements. On my first day, during a sunny afternoon, I was adjusting the coffee machine when the wind chime at the door jingled, signaling the arrival of my first customer. The customer was tall, with long legs, wearing a white shirt neatly tucked into his trousers. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing a string of prayer beads on his left wrist. I put down what I was holding and greeted him with a smile. "Welcome." Extra story, Mia. At the age of 12, my sister and I were kidnapped. The kidnapper demanded that our parents choose to save only one of us. As the lucky one, I was the one chosen to live. The kidnapper did as promised. My sister's throat was slit on the spot, and she fell to the ground covered in blood. She looked towards me, tears in her eyes, her lips moving silently except for the blood that spurted out. Perhaps it was the sheer brutality of the scene, or maybe it was the familiarity, but memories long buried in the depths of my brain suddenly broke free, flooding my mind like a tide. These were the memories lost in my foolishness, rushing back unexpectedly. It was the second time that I saw my sister covered in blood before me. She protected me with her life. I still remember, at the age of 7, how she shielded me in her arms, absorbing the kidnapper's punches and kicks with her body, until she was finally thrown out of the car, limp like a pile of cotton. In the countless days and nights that followed, I kept wondering, why did my life always have to be saved at the expense of my sister's? What right did I have? Looking back at our brief moments together, I never brought her any joy. yet all her suffering stemmed from me. From the moment I was born, I was unknowingly robbing her of everything that was hers. The love of our parents, the companionship on the road to growth, and countless moments of indulgently whining to our parents. All that she lacked nourished me, and I was clueless. To possess without understanding is such a fortunate sin. People like us are often called the beneficiaries, and as a beneficiary, there is no one to blame. Just as I hate that I was the one who survived, I can never fault my parents for their choices. I have come to understand my sister's hardships, yet I can never truly empathize with all that she went through. After much thought, it turns out that I am the sin itself. If I had not been born, my sister's situation at home might have been completely different. If I had been more sensible back then, not insisting on setting off fireworks, we wouldn't have encountered the traffickers, and she wouldn't have had to endure the consequences of my being kidnapped. Perhaps if I hadn't been found, over time she might have been able to mend her relationship with our parents, but life doesn't have so many ifs. I will never forget the day my sister lay on the cold ground, and when I crawled over, I got covered in blood, which no amount of washing could clean, just like my life, always stained with my sister's blood, and I, even lacking the right to choose death. After my sister died, my mother gradually began to lose her sanity, often crying and laughing unconsciously, sometimes mistaking me for someone else, kneeling in front of me, crying and apologizing. My father's hair turned white overnight, yet he still had to keep the company going, his bright eyes now devoid of light, only old and murky. This family still exists, but it's also broken. My sister's life weighs down on us, unbearable for anyone. Sometimes I think the adult world is quite absurd too. They only start to regret after losing something. What's the use? I don't understand. I can only watch them suffer, detached like an outsider. I can no longer be close to my parents, nor reconcile with myself. All I can do is force myself to remember everything about my sister. She liked jasmine-scented shower gel, light green clothes, watching comedy movies, eating street food, disliked Western food, disliked taking photos, and couldn't eat seafood. The books she read, the textbooks and exercise books she used, I went through them over and over again. These imprints of my sister's life, I force myself to engrave them on me. This is the shackle I have placed on myself. Other people's pain can be soothed and faded over time, but I never have the right to forget my sister. Harry also can't forget my sister. I later found out that he was the one who was kidnapped with us, and with my sister's help, he managed to escape. He was also the only one who accompanied her during her most painful and helpless times. He loved my sister. After my sister died, Harry went abroad, and when he returned, he took over the family business, becoming the much-respected Mr. Harry. He appeared aloof and condescending during the Lincoln family's most challenging times. When faced with desperation, their father sought his presence. At a dinner, he drank until he suffered a stomach bleed. At that moment, Harry sat at the head of the table, idly fiddling with a string of Buddhist beads in his hand, his voice cold and indifferent. Mr. Charles, have you ever experienced true despair, the kind where you're abandoned by your parents and left to await death? You've conducted so many rituals for her. Was it to dispel her resentment, or did you genuinely hope for her to have a better next life? At least she won't have to encounter parents like you again. In the business world, people are accustomed to shifting with the wind. No one dared to lend a hand. As the Lincoln family nearly faced bankruptcy, Harry stepped in at the last minute under the condition that their parents never see their daughter again. After their sister was cremated, their mother, clutching the ashes, refused to bury them and kept them in the room instead. Later, Harry took her ashes and buried them under a parasol tree in the temple. It was a tranquil place, with daily chanting, the scent of flowers, the sounds of insects, and gentle breezes. Every month, Harry would stay at the temple for a week, practicing vegetarianism and copying scriptures, praying for a smooth and peaceful next life for his sister. I've seen Harry a few times. He always wore a string of Buddhist beads on his left wrist, appearing detached as if not of this world. Yet, every time he stood under that parasol tree, his eyes and brows would brighten, reminiscent of a gentle breeze and light rain in April. Everyone thought Harry was naturally cold and detached, but I knew it wasn't that there was no one who could bring a smile to his face. It's just that person was no longer here. I drifted through life aimlessly for 5 years. In my senior year of high school, a boy confessed his feelings for me, and when I didn't reciprocate, he began to rally our classmates to bully me. I didn't care about the rumors that were spreading. But he shouldn't have broken my pendant. That pendant was something my sister had made for me during a pottery session. There wasn't much left of my sister's belongings at home. After Harry took her ashes, my father had the maid clear out her room and burn everything. He sat in his chair, his back no longer erect, just heavily saying that the living must move forward. He took care of everything while I was not at home and was planning to emigrate, with so few of my sister's belongings left. When I returned, all that was left was a handful of ashes. Besides the books I had already taken to my room, that pendant was my last memento, and it was destroyed. What could compensate for that? I thought long and hard and decided his life would be the compensation. I fought him furiously, and he ended up in the hospital with a bloody head, while I ended up in the police station. Given the current status of the Lincoln family, they couldn't save me, but I wasn't the least bit nervous. To me, life and death were merely the difference between closing and opening my eyes. But I didn't expect Harry to come for me. He stood in the rain, holding an umbrella, his voice soft and damp with rainwater. Let's go home. Thanks to Harry's intervention, things were quickly settled, and I rested at home for a week. Then Harry informed us that he was arranging one last ritual for my sister. The abbot said that family members needed to lead the ceremony with a red cloth. So my parents were allowed to attend. That day in the mountains, Harry told me that he had arranged a transfer for me. I asked him why he cared about me. He didn't look at me, his gaze lingering on the parasol tree. You are Linda's only family. At that moment, I suddenly felt very tired. Why, in the 5th year after my sister's death, was I still enjoying privileges related to her? What kind of person must I be? There are no answers. Everyone says that the deceased can appear in dreams. But my sister never visited mine, leaving me with no one to ask. After I transferred schools, I thought my life would continue to be stagnant, but then I met someone who reminded me so much of my sister. Her way of speaking, her habits, her gaze, and the feelings she evoked were all so similar. Sometimes, I would be bewildered, thinking she was my sister, or that my sister's soul resided within her. But I knew such thoughts were delusions. How could the dead possibly come back to life? Yet, I couldn't help but be drawn to her. Every time I was with her, I would subconsciously recall my sister, and those deep, unshared thoughts would slip out to her unintentionally. It felt certain that she would listen, understand, and respond. Once, I asked her, "Do you believe that the dead can return?" She continued scribbling on her paper, absorbed in her calculations. "I believe more in the living needing to carry on with 2 lives." A breeze fluttered through her hair, and as she tucked a strand behind her ear, a light jasmine fragrance wafted through the air. When she looked up at me, a soft dimple appeared on her smiling face, her eyes warm and comforting. In that moment, I was so stunned I forgot to breathe. I had never thought that I would find such life and presence in the eyes of someone who both resembled and was not my sister. I think, perhaps my sister's soul has redeemed me once again. As long as I am alive, I can always feel her aura. That star named sister will never fall. This time, I truly want to live well. Years later, I dreamt again of that night she was taken, seeing my sister lying in a pool of blood, tears in her eyes, her lips moving silently. "Sister, in the last moments as your life faded, what were you trying to tell me?" I guess, it was surely neither resentment nor blame. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.